So I'm a little late, but I'm here looking to build. I am actually going to just drop the link. I have a few things on my mind, but nothing particular. Definitely looking for an open build. Peace, sis. What's going on? Join me if you want to. I'm actually just opening the panel for open build, open discussion. Nothing particular. A few things that I'm thinking about, and it's been a pretty eventful week. A lot going on, like literally. So, um, I am just getting in a few minutes ago. I wanted to start a little while ago, but I did get in later than I thought. So I had to reschedule. And now I am actually, yes, I am actually going to get started with the build. If you guys are ready, what's going on? See if anyone likes to join me. Definitely feel free to join. And I'm going to start off with a quick video that we can listen to for a quick minute. Let me see if this is the one. I should have the other up just a moment. All right. Grand assist.
Oh, I just thought I'd keep you a little company while you do what you do.
I
I'm not
appreciate
as yeah. My phone is very low. I can't hear good.
you can't hear that good.
And my phone is loud, so it could be sometimes when I go into or come on stage, my phone lower down. So I might have to come back off your stage and just listen.
Okay, that's fine, babe. I will play a quick video, and like I said, I just had just a few things that I wanted to possibly talk about. None particular. I have a build plan, but I'm gonna kind of wait on that. I don't want to do too much like talking on a particular subject because that requires a lot of thought and thinking. So just wanted to open the panel up for any of the people that I usually build with and see if they may want to join me, and we can just have an open conversation in particular. So yeah, definitely feel free to sit, sis, or you can get back in the audience. Either one is fine with me, babe. I'm going to play a quick video. There was one I wanted to play and I cannot find it. But I'm going to do do this particular one because I think this is a good one to start off a conversation with. So this is a documentary. No, actually, I'm not gonna play that. Hold on, let me go back. It's showing the other one. Something to show a little bit. All the stuff with frequency today. What do you feel about? Oh, dang, sis, you jumped down as soon as I was about to ask you a question. That's okay. It's been eventful, guys. You guys know, I always talk about the frequency and how these things affect us, so on and so forth. When I tell you this week, it's been like so many different things that have been coming into confirmation on that. I am going to play this quick video, guys. Let's see here. Well, let me put in my disclosures just in case there's any issues. And actually, let me verify if this has a copyright on it because I don't believe it does, but I want to make sure. And let's see. It does. Okay, that's okay. We're going to play this Secret Spells of the English Language. This was something that was discussed today in a bill, and we will start with this one. It's not too long, actually, so give me 1 second to get this shared, and this can definitely top up our conversation. Oh, you couldn't hear, sis? Okay. Yeah, it's late night. I see a lot of people aren't even up or they're either busy doing something else. But we're gonna get started with a little bit of something, guys. I just want to reach out to you guys. I haven't done a build in a minute, a couple of days. I think last week was the last one I've done. I know I've been very inconsistent with everything that I've been doing in the past like 2 weeks or so. So I just wanted to make sure I came to you guys, let you know you are on my mind. I have not forgotten about you guys. I am definitely learning and growing. And in the mix of that, I want you guys to also do the same. So in doing that, Lord, I want you to it and make sure that this information isn't too much to handle. But we're gonna get into this. Oh, it was more of an echo to say, "Oh Lord." Okay, understandable. Sometimes it's me. It's probably my line. So we're gonna play this quick video. This is only about 3 minutes, guys. And
So, what do I mean by the secret spells of the English language? Well, let me share with you what I call our premier life sentence. And it goes something like this: We awake each morning and go off during the weekdays to earn the living at various jobs and undertakings until we come to the weekend. And this seems perfectly acceptable to most people. However, more people die between 6 and 9 on a Monday morning than any other time of the week. So I do what I call a translation of the English language, and I spell that TRANCE with the bells. So when you translate that life sentence, you remember that a wake is a funeral party for the dead. Mourning is the state you're in when you attend a wake. And you would have to be in a weekdays to earn the living, since urns are for the ashes of the dead. We call our jobs undertakings. Job itself is a Hebrew word for persecute. And what we get at the end of this perverse bargain with life is the wound of the devil as we become progressively weakened ourselves. And so our equivalent greeting to each other is hello, the reverse of which is oh hell. And at first, I suspected the hands of collusion entangling the language to foster illusion. And I think it's quite true that a culture's theology has a great deal to do with the word's etymology and how it evolves over time to combine incompatible meanings that may undermine the original thoughts it was meant to define. But now, I don't think it's planned, for the thing that I've found is that like concepts can gravitate toward the same sound and vibrate at the rate that our thoughts designate. Because words are electromagnetic vibrations whose fine alphabetic tintinnabulations can take on the tint of interpretations, which they then imprint on our metal of mind, causing sounds to it when they're of the same kind.
I am. Let's see. Stop sharing that. I want to talk about those words and the frequencies that we are actually welcome, alchemist and alchemist the end book or handbook, alchemist handbook. I'm sorry. I appreciate you giving me a like as you came in, dear. Yes, we have a very small listening audience right now. I know it is very late. I planned this earlier. This is actually rescheduled from yesterday. There's so much that's been going on. I haven't had time to reach out to everyone and, just be in tune with everyone that is subscribed to the channel. So I want to make sure you guys know, just because I am doing things and very busy right now, I have not forgotten about you. I definitely have a few things that I need to get back into. Get back into with you guys when it comes to all the dissemination we've been doing, the breakdown, things of that nature. So what we're going to do is make sure that I'm at least reaching out to you guys, even if it's to bring you a little bit of information on some things that I think are important, mainly with some good topics. I definitely want to reach out to you on this next build. I have it scheduled for tomorrow morning, I believe, at 9. I'm going to try and make sure that I am available for that. There's a lot of things that go on. As you guys know, I have to do things on my time, even if I schedule something. If something else comes up of more importance.
So what do I mean by the secret spells of the English
Well,
language?
this thing starts
Well, let me share with
playing
you
again.
what I call it.
So in that note, just to make sure that we are spreading the proper information and knowledge. There's so much that goes on, especially over here on YouTube. I have not been very in tune with YouTube more recently because I've been doing so many other things. But keeping in mind, when it comes to when it comes to certain things that are going on with us, we have to make sure that we focus on the things that are going to put us in the right place, in the right space. Like, you can be like all over the place, including myself. This happens so much where I'm just like planning one thing, something else happens, things come up that we have to make sure of, that don't block us from handling things that we need to. Sometimes there are positive things that can come and cause an interference. Sometimes there are negative things that can come and cause interference. You just have to be astute to, what and how to follow in those things. Boy, I always come in here with that. So we have to be astute to these things. I actually see that this is not a great time to have an open panel. People are obviously very busy. Some people may be asleep. I just decided to come on and do this anyway. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play a documentary for you guys. It's about an hour long. Anyone that is awake with me, you can definitely let me know if you want to join the panel. We can have a discussion. I just wanted to have easy talk this evening and see what was on everyone's mind, if they had anything to talk about. But I see mostly everyone is busy. So what I'm going to do is get to this particular documentary. I'm trying to see if this one... And let's see. Okay. All right. Yes, let's get into it. Computer's moving a bit slow, but it's coming. This is going to be a very good one. All right. Pause it. We'll share the screen. And go from there. Give me one moment, guys. Let's get the screen share. This is going to be very interesting. You're here. That's right, babe. You're here. And Darius here. White Falcon's here, even though he's always here with some type of weird contention. He's here. So we are here, and that's all that's important. So not to say that, a smaller crowd isn't just as important, but as far as a conversation, it's hard to converse with one person if you want to have a discussion. So I'm going to actually omit the open panel portion unless someone asks to join or joins me. We will get into this next video really quickly. This particular video is a documentary that explains time traveling. So let's get started.
Rather complex and it takes a while to digest, but it's 100% worth it. It's an official
declassified CIA document to rift consciousness and beyond, known as the Gateway Process. While it's an older document and has been declassified for a while now, the fact that quantum physics, psychedelic, and neurobiology confirm what's written within those pages is nothing short of outstanding. It's consciousness in a profound and analytical way, and knowledge from mystics from Hindu, Buddhist, and Tibetan cultures to contemporary scientific knowledge of Planck distance, Einstein's theory of relativity, and of Niels Bohr. The cosmic spiral and torus is everything, and everything is one. It seems as individual consciousness is pulled from the collective consciousness using the frequency vibrations of the being. This applies to humans, whales, fungus, and amoeba. Mystics of past and present, including all ancient religions, understood these concepts thousands of years ago. Still, it takes much to open the minds of the most pragmatic, self-conscious, uptight people.
Commercial, guys. Hold on.
I've been getting paid $1,000, and you can see it's colorful. Okay, so I'll be right.
'31. The out-of-body movement. This remarkable phenomenon has been saved for discussion in detail until last because of the interest in which it occasions and special circumstances involved in its attainment. Monroe Institute stresses that the Gateway program was not established solely for the purpose of enabling participants to obtain the out-of-body state. Nor does the program guarantee that most participants will succeed in doing it during the course of the training at the Institute. Only one tape out of the many which make up the Gateway experience is devoted to the techniques involved in the out-of-body movement. Basically, these techniques are merely designed to make it easier for the individual to achieve the out-of-body state when his brainwave pattern and personal energy levels have reached a point that he is in apparent harmony with his surrounding electromagnetic environment, such that he feels that he has reached the threshold where separation is a possibility. Out-of-body. Bob Monroe, the founder of Monroe Institute, is quoted in a recent magazine article as saying, in order to assist the participant, the particular hemisync tape concerned with that technique employs beta signals of around 2,877.3 CPS, or cycles per second. Since 30 to 40 CPS is considered to be the normal range for beta brainwave signals, those associated with the wakeful state, it is apparent that the Monroe Institute is convinced the same state of brainwave output promotes altered states such as this is also important consideration in distinguishing achievement of out-of-body states. The actual techniques employed for separating from the body involve such simple maneuvers as rolling out, lifting out after the fashion of a telephone pole, wherein the individual separates in a rigid, head-first manner, such that he finds himself standing at attention at the foot of his physical body. and sliding out through either end of his body. 32. Role of REM sleep. It is interesting to note that Bobman informed the Gateway class that finished on the 7th of May, 1983, that an ex-trainer of his op in Charlottesville found he could guarantee out-of-body movements by bringing participants down into a rapid eye movement, REM, state of sleep, and then use the hemisync technique. This may well be a function of the fact that most, if not all people, reputedly go into an out-of-body state during REM sleep. REM sleep is the deepest possible level of ordinary sleep and involves complete disengagement of the body's motor cortex functions from the neck down and nearly complete the suppression of consciousness in the left brain hemisphere. The effect of this is to put the body in a state of complete stillness so far as the skeletal muscle structure is concerned, thereby further promoting deep rest, eliminate the bifurcation echo. In addition, it leaves the right hemisphere of the brain free to respond to the instructions and suggestions contained on the Gateway tape. However, the use of the hemisync tapes at this point may be less factor in actually achieving the out-of-body state than it is a method in that the residual memory of having naturally achieved an out-of-body state is carried into the waking state. Indeed, that some dreams associated with deep levels of sleep are, in fact, functions of the same kind of altered consciousness involved in interaction with the universe that plays a role in all of the Focus 12, 15, and 21 states described above. The difference between those states in the condition of the mind in REM sleep seems to be that the left hemisphere is almost totally disengaged in the latter experience. Such memory of what lived in the altered state of consciousness cannot be achieved by conscious desire, because the left hemisphere has no knowledge of its existence or its location in the right hemisphere. Admittedly, some people can be trained to remember their REM state dreams through intense conditioning in the wake state, but even that may be more a function of establishing pathways in the right hemisphere, which the left hemisphere can access the following re-entry into the wakeful state, than it is any indication of any specific left hemisphere conscious involvement in the process of REM sleep. In any event, the three apparent conditions required for voluntarily inducing an out-of-body state in most individuals seem to be: 1. Achievement of a state of profound quiet in the body. The bifurcation in echo phase resonance at approximately 7 Hz is established. 2. Synchronization of the two brain hemispheres. And 3. Subsequent stimulation of the right hemisphere of the mind to attain a state of heightened alertness, which, of course, interferes with brain hemisphere synchronization, but not until a sufficient level of enhanced frequency range has been established to help achieve body state. Tune into yourself and take action toward
It was 2009, and I'd been out of a job for over a year. I had no degree, no network, and no experience. But what I did next changed my life forever.
and take action towards the life. And that's why Skillshare. If you want to learn this topic, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. This platform has thousands of classes from different categories that provide you with a lifetime's worth of experience and knowledge in such short periods of time that there's no excuse not to try it out. There is a class I highly recommend. It's called Modern Meditation. Discover your potential, power, and purpose. Created by Justin Michael Williams. In his Skillshare original, Justin will help you take action towards the life you've always wanted with an exclusive 10-day meditation experience. In just 10 minutes a day, and with Justin as your guide, you'll identify the aspects of your life that need the most attention, break through self-sabotage and fears getting in your way, and visualize your dream life and take action steps towards it. You've got to take this class. And because Skillshare is today's video sponsor, it's totally free. The first 1,000 people to use the link on my description box or my code will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Now, let's get back to the video. 33. Information collection potential. The information acquisition potential associated with the out-of-body state seems to attract the most attention from the standpoint of developing practical applications for the gateway technique. Unfortunately, although the out-of-body state can apparently be achieved by many people without excessive expenditure of time or effort, the purposes to which it can be put are currently limited by the fact that although individuals in that state may travel anywhere on an instantaneous basis in either the terrestrial or in other spheres, information distortion in former context remains a concern. To date, according to numerous experience conducted in persons moving from other in the out-of-body state to read a series of 10 computer-generated numbers. Although most have acquired enough of the digits to make clear that their consciousness was present, none have ever succeeded in getting all 10 correct. This seems to be a function of the fact that physical reality in the present is not the only holographic the individual may encounter in and out of. There are also energy patterns left by people or events occurring at the same physical site, being viewed but from the past rather than the present. In addition, since thoughts are the product of energy patterns and energy patterns are a reality, it may also be possible that individuals in an out-of-body state, which mingle with physical reality and are not easily differentiated. Finally, as Melissa Jager writes, there is another potential problem area in the sense that holograms can be viewed pseudoscopically, that is to say, inside out or backward, just as well as they can be seen in proper perspective. Some of the distortion ultimately prove to be traceable to this. In the out-of-body state, an individual receives the holographic energy patterns given off by people or things interacting with space reality in a somewhat distorted form. 4. Belief system iterations. In 1967, Alexandra David Neal and Lama Yongden wrote a book entitled Secret Oral Teachings in Tibetan Buddhist Sects, from which the following quote is taken. The tangible world is movement, not a collection of moving objects, but movement itself. There are no which constitutes the objects which appear nothing is a continued and infinite. In Tibetan, Sal, all objects perceptible to senses of whatever kind and are the classic description of universal hologram is to be found in a Hindu sutra, which says, in the heaven of Indra is said to be a network of pearls so arranged that if you look at one, you see all the others reflected in it. I have cited this quotation because it shows that the concept of the universe, which at least some physicists are now coming to accept, is identical in its essential aspects with the one known to the learned entertainment in the ancient world. The concept of the cosmic example is well known, familiar with the ancient Western, nor the theories presented at variance with the essential tenets of the Judeo-Christian stream of thought, i.e. the created world, as being an emanation of an omnipotent and omniscient divinity who is completely unknowable in his primary state of being. The absolute at rest in infinity is a concept straight out of Hebrew mystical philosophy. Even the Christian concept of the Trinity shines through the description of the absolute as presented in this paper. The description of energy totally at rest in infinity fits the Christian metaphysical concept of the Father, with the infinite self-consciousness resident in that energy providing the motive force of will to bring a portion of that energy into motion to create reality. This is so in order to attain self-consciousness, the conscious absolute project a and then perceive it. That hologram mirror image of the absolute in infinity. Still exists outside time, but is one actual agent of all creation. All reality. 7. Motivational aspect. It is a step-by-step procedure which involves repetitive practice of the techniques concerned, using each new insight as a means of penetrating the first practice section. But the rate of progress is so much faster with the gateway approach than it is with transcendental meditation or other forms of mental self-discipline, and its horizons seem to be so much wider than the discipline needed it would seem to be within means of even the impatient, resultant our society. Unlike yoga and other forms of Eastern mental discipline, Gateway does not require infinite patience and total personal subservience to and faith in a head becomes increasingly clear, and the value of Gateway moves from the status of a matter of intellectual assessment to one of experience. 38. Conclusion. There is a There is a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering Gateway plausible in terms of its essential objectives. Institution insights, not only personal but of a practical and professional nature, would seem to be within bounds of reasonable expectations. However, a phased approach for entering the Gateway experience in an accelerated mode would seem to be required if the time needed to reach advanced states of altered consciousness is to be brought to manageable limits from the standpoint of establishing organized exploitation. The most promising approach in the foregoing study involves the following steps. A. Using the Gateway hemisync tapes to achieve enhanced brain focus and to induce hemispheric synchronization. B. Then REM sleep to induce the essence of relaxation. C. Hypnotic suggestions designed to enable an individual to into deep non-aid at will. D. Use suggestions to attain much enhanced focus of concentration and motivation in rapidly progressing through Focus 12 exercises. E. Then repeat steps A and B following the use of the auto-hypnotic suggestion that will occur and remembered. F. Repeat E to achieve facility in gaining an out-of-body state under conscious control. Alter hypnotic suggestions to stress the ability to consciously control out-of-body movement and maintain it even after REM sleep state ends. G. Approach Focus 15 and 21 objectives. Escape from time, space, and interdimension. from the outer perspective. H. Use a multi-focus approach to solve the problem of distortion in terrestrial information gathering trips. This approach the use of 3 individuals in the out-of-body state, one viewing the target objective here in time-space, one viewing it at focus 15 as it slips into the immediate past, and one viewing it at focus 21 as it slips from the immediate future. Debrief all 3 and compare data gathered from the 3 views to ensure that the 3 all go out of body together in the same environment. Their consciousness energy systems should resonate in synthetic oscillation. They can tune into the same time different planes to greater effectiveness. I encourage the pursuit of full knowledge by all individuals or experiments to enhance objectivity body rapid progress. J. Be intellectually prepared to react to encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded. K. Arrange to have groups of people in Focus 12 state unite their altered consciousness to build holographic patterns around sensitive areas to repulse possible unwanted out-of-body presences. L. Encourage more advanced gateway participants to build holographic patterns of successful attainment and rapid progress for advanced colleagues to assist them in progressing through the gateway system. If these experiments are carried through, it is to be hoped that we will truly find a gateway to gateway and to the realm of practical application for the whole system of techniques which comprise it.
All right, guys, what's going on now? I got something else for you too. So, since we didn't get a conversation, your girl was up and ready to do a bill. I guess people are busy. I know I actually rescheduled from yesterday. There were a few messages. Everyone's like, where are you? What's going on? Yeah, I actually got very busy yesterday, but today I thought would be a better day. It's a Saturday, maybe people are relaxing, doing a few things, so on and so forth. Definitely understandable. So I've got another important video I want you guys to see. Give me just a moment to get that pulled up. And we'll kind of go from there. And this other one. And there we go. I'm up and ready. Chief, gutter lane, peace. What's going on, brother? What's going on? I see my brother compiling and change his name, Gutter Lane. Okay, now, bro. I know you, though. I see your signature. Big Chief. What's going on, brother? Peace, love, and all perfect energy. You already know. Yeah, this video right here is crazy. This one too. I didn't even see this. Oh, I got it. Hold on 1 second, guys. Let me pause this for a minute and get this pulled up for you guys. There it goes. It's trying to pause anytime it's more than like 5 minutes or anything of the sort. Y'all know I got 5,000 things up on. If I close down a window, I'm with certain things I have up, I literally will not recall the particular information I want to discuss on a certain topic. So I try to leave everything up so that I'm able to I don't know what y'all heard, what y'all didn't hear. I'm just talking. I click back over to put something in the chat, and I see the thing done click me out. So I apologize, guys, if y'all were sitting there for a minute like, yo, does sis even know that she is there or nay? So let me get to this. Hold on 1 second. All right, now I'm going to get this pulled up, guys. Goodness gracious. Give it a second here. And we should be all set. All right, let's get ready to put it in theater mode. And then I will share. Try and make sure it's adjusted and pulled up. I tell you everything I gotta go through. I know it's blank, sis. I'm about to pull it up now, babe. Give me 2 seconds. It actually had kicked me out. It kicked me out of the StreamYard, believe it or not. Kicked me like right out. But yeah, it's okay. I'm right back at it. And we're about to get started with this video. That is going to be a very good one as well. Make sure it's running smooth. I don't want them to kick me out. All right, let's get it. Here we go, guys. I'm astute and ready.
Of Black history, lost, stolen, sprayed.
Charlie Brown, you're the kind of reminding you have ability and a sense of honor that are very fine. With heart such as yours, open. Oh, how to do it! You became Charlie Brown. You did.
Great. Very good. All right, we'll go to lunch now, and this afternoon we'll continue with our meeting.
No, I could never fit in that. Never get in that at all. Listen. What's the whitest thing in your eyes? Sugar. Non-integrated, non-sweet. But you see, there is a black man in your sugar. His name? Rillier. Norbert Rillier in 1846 invented a vacuum pan that revolutionized the sugar refining industry. Now, you have to dig to find that fact. I mean, it's not much history, but it's still history. Now, what do you stand in? In your shoes. Now, there's just you and your shoes, isn't it? Nope. See, there's a black Oxford's with you. Sharing your soul and your heel is a man, his name is Jan Ernst Metzelger. And his drawing by the invented the machine as fast as possible. And again, but it's history. Am I coming in clear to California? I mean, is this tearing through a Nevada mountains and slipping into San Francisco? Okay, well, I want to thank you, Jim Beckworth. Jim Beckworth, out of St. Louis, hunter, trapper, and honorary chief of the Crow Tribe of Indians. We had trouble finding you, Jim. Though you helped open the West, you didn't make the books. Chicago, right here, where the building is. Young fellow by the name of Jean-Baptiste de Sable. Jean Baptiste. He founded Chicago, when he traded with the Indians. And of course, there it is right there, that particular time. Think onion Indians. And de Sable, the Lewis and Clark tradition here, right in there. You'll find a black man named York helping to open the West. The are trying to wash the black out of York. That's what you might call historically significant because a lot of people think we ought to wash white, but we ain't gonna, you see. To you, Texas, right down the Chill Trail, right here. Right down there with 5,000 black cowboys who never made it to the Hollywood Western. Did you know that? Huh? And the same one black outlaw, his name Deadwood Dick, who claimed brothers were Bat Masterson, Billy the Kid, and Jesse James. Deadwood Dick used to ride into the saloon, order 2 drinks, one for himself, one for his horse. And here's his horse, drinking a shot of red eye with a straw. And how about the 186,000 blacks who fought on the Union side during the Civil War? 38,000 died. How about Teddy Roosevelt's charge up San Juan Hill? It wasn't just the Rough Riders who made it. 4 black regiments went right up with Teddy. They didn't get lost going up the hill. They got lost in the history books. How about the North Pole? Snow White? Well, the first man there was black, Matthew Henson. He spoke Eskimo. And he was Admiral Perry's navigator. And although he made it first to the pole, it never quite made it to the history books. And how about your heart? Can we get there? All right. Daniel Hale.
Okay, y'all. I got y'all. I paused it and I'm about to go and unplug about 3 things that's gonna make this play better. Give me 2 seconds to do that. Let me get this pulled up. I'm gonna leave it paused. I'm gonna go and plug a couple of things that may be draining the Wi-Fi a little more. So let's hope that helps. So give me a second. Let's see.
Blacks who made it, blacks who made history, but who didn't get into the history at all. And the strange thing is how little there is, folks. Napoleon once said history is a fable agreed upon, and the fable agreed upon up to now is that American history is white on white.
These symbolic finger, eye, and body postures
Hold on,
can
y'all. I
vividly
gotta stop
depict
this.
certain states or
It went
processes
back.
of consciousness.
Let me fix that.
Mudras
and then
engage certain areas of
we
the
gotta
brain
get back to
and
it, 'cause I don't
exercise a
know what the heck.
corresponding
It just went
influence
back to
on
a whole nother
We can
video.
effectively
Like that was like crazy. For real, for real. Okay, hold on a second. Let me go back. I don't even know why I did that. I literally did not click on anything. Ah, Gets humorous sometimes. And I literally unplugged like three things. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to make sure we get to where I think you guys saw the last portion. Let's start here. Let's see.
Thing is how little there is about us in the textbooks. Just the Rough Riders who made it. 4 black regiments went right up with Teddy. They didn't get lost going up the hill. They got lost in the history books. How about the North Pole? Snow White? Well, the first man there was black, Matthew Henson. He spoke Eskimo. And he was Admiral Perry's navigator. And although he made it first to the pole, it never quite made it to the history books. And how about your heart? Can we get there? All right. Successfully. But this list could go on forever. Blacks who made it, blacks who made history, but who didn't get into the history text at all. And the strange thing is how little there is about us in the textbooks. Napoleon once said history is a fable agreed upon, and the fable agreed white on white. Sometimes we did get into the history books. All wrong. Now you take the Growth of the American Republic, 1942 edition. Samuel Eliot Morrison, Henry Steele Commager. Quote, as for. This has to do with slavery. As Sambo, Professor Morrison. Sambo, Professor Manager. As for Sambo, whose wrongs moved us to wrath and tears, there is some reason to believe that he suffered less than any other class in the South from its peculiar institution. Peculiar institution means slavery. Although brought to America by force, probably optimistic Negroes soon became attached to the country and devoted to his white folks. Unquote. Those were written by 2 Pulitzer white Northern professors. Slavery. That's the place everybody likes to start Negro. You have ignorant black men being brought from African chains. Terrible thing, slavery. But this way slavery started sort of to sting out of it. Because the way it's used, and we Afro-Americans starting with grass skirts like the kids in the Tarzan movies. And though America gave us slavery, America kindly gave us religion and a lick or two of education. And when we get more jobs and more up from slavery. But, we had something before we left Africa, something more than rhythm. I mean, we had a culture. Culture was so high that great artists in it. Now here's a sculpture, and here's what Paul Klee took from him. Now here's a work by an unknown African, and Pablo Picasso liked what he saw. Another African design, and Modigliani swiped, or he was influenced by it, or whatever polite word you want to use. Another black African artist, and Picasso didn't change it very much. I mean, when you look at this copying, you got to give us a little more than rhythm. You got to give us style. Now, if you tell the history of slavery right, you got a big problem on your hands. The slave trader didn't take some savage out of Africa. He took a human being, sold him like an animal, and separated him from his family. Invented the cruelest slaves. It broke up black families. After slavery was over, America kept breaking up the black man's family. And that's some awful history to teach. If you want to look history right straight in the eye, you're going to get a black eye. Because it isn't important a few black heroes got lost or stolen or strayed in America's books is why they got left out. Now, this country has got a psychological history. There was a master race. There isn't any political slavery anymore. Those same old attitudes have hung around. I mean, the burning part of burn, baby, burn is right here in this classroom. We want to thank Mrs. Lovely Billups and the whole gang here at fourth grade for the brilliant and intelligent artwork that they've done here to make this whole broadcast sing. I want you guys to keep pretending that I'm not here. You're doing a great job, and just keep on drawing and reading what you have to do, because I'm going to talk about other kids, not you. These are kids from other schools. Did you know in some states it used to be to read or write? Getting these integrated schoolrooms, and most people think that if we have teaching and enough jobs, everything is going to take care of itself. But there's a sort of history running right through kids as young as these. It tears you up if you know how to look at drawings kids make, because you know much about history and anything about discrimination. I mean, nobody hates little black kids, but writers, white producers, and white directors for a white audience. Most black parts were the way white Americans wanted them to be. The black male was consistently shown as nobody, nothing. He had no qualities that could be admired by any man, or more particularly, any. White people didn't like to think much about them, sort of like a relic getting a rest home. I mean, happy darkies, dancing and singing was all they wanted to hear about. Being good Christians, the whites out front liked to think the blacks out back were kind of happy. Uncle Tom's Cabin was one of the eight that tried to say anything about black. Uncle Tom was changed a little each time it was put on the stage, and all the parts were played by white actors. And they made a movie of it in 1903. Uncle Tom was the idea of a good nigger. You might say he was what H. Rap Brown ain't. They made this picture 5 times. By the time they finished with it, Mickey Rooney could have played Uncle Tom. Minstrel shows started as the man's entertainment station owners. When they were filmed, they were done as sort of a joke, and the back end of the job making fun of himself. This anti-Negro film was called The Birth of a Nation. In 1918, it was the best movie that had ever been made. A cat named D.W. Griffith produced it, and he knew how. See? Birth of a Nation pretended to tell the story of the Civil War and what afterwards were freed. White woman couldn't walk her own sidewalk, if you picture. In the South, Negroes got the right to vote. People taking in extra. These black bad guys don't look very bad to you. It's probably because they were white actors wearing burnt cork. Negro legislators took over in the South, and in the film they were made to look like apes. And this was the movie version of how it looked in the Southern state legislature. They drank whiskey, they ate chickens in the State House, and they put their feet up on the table with the shoes off. And of course, they passed crazy laws according to the film, like anybody could marry anybody they wanted to. It was obvious to anyone who saw this picture that Negroes weren't fit to govern themselves or anyone else because they really weren't people. This film is 50 years old, and it may look silly and out of date now, but it didn't look silly when it was made and seen. Several million Americans believe that this is the way things would be if they weren't careful. So pretty careful. Cameron, officer in the Confederate Army, is all upset over the way Northerners and the chain taking the mint julep right out of his mouth. So he takes a walk one day while he's worrying about it, and he sees two white kids playing, and then four black kids come along. Being hardly human and naturally afraid of ghosts, the black kids run. Colonel Cameron sees the whole scene, gets his great idea. And with this, that great white all-American organization, the KKK, was born. Cavalry and the bedsheeters come to the rescue. The South is saved. The Ku Klux Klan was the good boy who saved the South. Most Hollywood films, though, the early ones, weren't really nasty. Nobody was sitting around saying, hey, let's take care of the niggers. What producers were doing, money they made pictures to enjoy. They showed Negroes the way most Americans like to think of them. To blame Hollywood is like throwing a rock at the mirror because you don't like what you see in it. Burt Williams was one of the great vaudeville performers. He couldn't get parts in white pictures, so he made a lot of short comedies. He played the part most Americans consider typical Negro. It wasn't bad, really, just lazy, stupid, and happy the way he was. And his feet hurt. He was afraid of most everything. And when he was scared, he shook and his teeth chattered. Unlike a scared white man, the black man's eyes could pop out of his head. When he was scared, he was so scared he couldn't talk. And he was also so scared he couldn't run. Black women, on the other hand, were steady and imperturbable. They stood like a rock on the face of things that like men. Another strange physical characteristic was they were really very scared. Guys, turn. When you look back on these old films, jumping out at you, the most consistent thing about it was the attack on the black man. He was not in the privilege of being a man. He was a boy, you know. Here, boy. They had a lot of other great qualities besides being cowardly. For instance, they stole chickens.
Ain't nobody here but us chickens.
They shot crabs.
That is your papa talking to you now. That's come on. Hit them one more time.
Lions weren't the only thing they were afraid of either. They were afraid of gorillas.
Wonderful. That you next to me? Wonderful. Is that you next? Now come on, Wonderful. Now don't stand around. Wonderful, please say yes.
Also afraid of skeletons.
Yeah. I am.
What's your hurry, boys? Even when they were little boys, they had these characteristics. Farina in our gang was the boy. The tradition of stupid, crap-shooting, chicken-stealing idiot popularized by an actor named Lincoln Theodore Monroe Andrew Perry. It made two 30s, and he was Step in and fetch it.
Come out, whatever you do. Come out, wherever you am. How's the government looking for you? Where you going, stranger? You scare somebody stiff like that. I'm looking for hillbillies as you are. I ain't saying I am and I ain't saying I ain't. Well, that's close enough for me, because I'm tired of walking myself. The government told me I got to bring in a hillbilly, so you come go with me to Washington. I ain't a going. That's the color of another horse. But I tell you, you go for me. We go for the Navy. No. Well, I tell you, no, I don't go for the Army. No, I won't go.
It's too bad he was as good at it as he was. The character he played was planted in a lot of people's head, and they remember it the rest of their lives as clear as an auto accident.
What's that? Are you an Indian? Yes, no. I said Army Indian. I got two Seminole, and I got 4/5 Hiawatha. Wait a minute. Was a woman. I can't help it.
In movies with other actors who were as American as Mom's raspberry jello. If they accepted the stereotype, how wrong could it be?
Judge Rickey, can I see you some, please?
Well, I'm pretty busy.
Yes, but I just want to ask if you cared about it.
Care about what?
About over at my house, night before last.
Me?
Yes, you said you heard.
What's his name?
Oh, we call him L.R. Lars Rigby Livingston.
Oh, named him after me, did you?
Yes, the Lars Rigby. I told my old wife, I said, honey,
I appreciate it. I suppose a compliment, and I ought to do something for it.
yes, that's what I thought.
You come over to my place tomorrow, and I'll give you a job.
Yeah.
Rake and leave.
I asked him for what?
All-American little Shirley Temple played a lot of parts that involved her with black actors. She was always real nice to them.
Oh, James Henry, you always do it wrong.
This is an imitation Step and Fetch It named Willie Best with Shirley.
Come on, Miss Virgie. I just won't budge. I'll show them.
The white girl was brave and strong, and the big black man was stupid and cowardly.
Them for. Oh, honey, child. Them Yankees is mighty powerful. They can even change the weather. I never know what is warmer. I'm shivering and sweating at the same time.
Serve these cookies to Master Harold and wipe it.
Yes, ma'am, Miss Bird.
She was good to them, and they were her. Sort of a master and pet relationship.
How would you like to see Uncle Billy dance? Oh!
Let's get going, son.
This is Bill Bowden's, one of the great ones. But if he wanted to work and dance, he had to come into a picture through the servants' entrance. Shirley was good to children, too. They loved their little mistress, and she treated them real good.
Hello, Sally Ann.
Just like they were equals.
Go on now, Sally Ann. Miss Virgie, please, ma'am. We all done come here any happy returns. That's
you're done. There was more. I just I forgot it. Don't you worry. This is the very nicest present I got. Thank you ever so much.
Yes, indeed, children. It was very thoughtful and sweet. Come now, dear.
I'll see you later. See you later. We'll be waiting.
I suppose it might have surprised a lot of Hollywood producers to know a scene like that could actually make a lot of people, mostly black, sick to their stomach. This is a lot of fun, isn't it? The newsreels that were shown along with feature films knew a good thing when they saw one. They helped keep all the black cats in their place. Nobody black ever did anything very newsy in a newsreel. They did things like eat watermelon in an eating contest. Then another favorite for the newsreel cameraman was to film people throwing things. So college football was a good idea. And they were a lot very fun. If you weren't black, were funny.
That's right out of your mouth. Don't miss, boss. Don't miss. Well, you keep out, eh? Otherwise, you'll have flour in your room and you won't smell them. Oh, wait, hey!
He suggested the black man was toward black natives of other countries. They were always sneaking around the bushes, carrying on the head. White men weren't supposed to get caught sweating. I've seen a picture called Prestige, and it stated the colonial attitude.
Don't let it break, Andre. Take to him your race for a wedding gift. The prestige of the white man. That means everything you stand for, and it is the only weapon you two will have. Prestige. That it is enough to preserve you.
Yes, sir. And I'll try to remember it. If you'll kiss me.
Most non-white native or savage films, it often pleased to produce now a few chosen black who have great loyalty to him, the white man. Here's one defending Anne Harding to the death. There was always one loyal and true man who would do anything for his master. Some of them were wonderful people. If you really get a good one. Mostly, though, Negroes were not heroes. They were a bit part servants. Railroad.
Watch your step. Watch your step, sir. Now, this is your destination, folks.
They made very good servers. Look good in their caps.
Good morning, Colonel, sir.
And they were great at serving all kinds of drinks.
That coffee you'll stay like correlation.
Who says you got the...
Just Sassper's tea.
Wherever thirsty master, there were they also. They played Aunt Jemima.
Will you have enough? I don't know if I can stretch one small chicken, but as long as the water's running, we'll have soup enough.
Fluffy, will you take Kay upstairs and wash all that goo off her face and give her a good...
And one question they never answered. When the Negro woman was taking care of the white woman's kids, who was taking care of hers? They did all kinds of washing. They weren't washing noses. They were out back playing craps, of course.
I'm gonna do that. Since I saw your comment.
They met people stationed for the master.
You folks, I actually opened the panel. Please feel free to join me. I didn't have any topic in mind. I've been showing different videos on just certain things. The first two videos were actually informative about being able to extend yourself outside of your physical body. Start off with a little serious topic, and then I wanted to show a little some of the things that went on in our history. But I'm going to get to something that I think is very important here. Let me make sure that I have the right video. I'll show you a little bit about some of the things here. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Let's do this. There's a commercial, so I'm going to let that play so you guys don't have to see it. And then we're going to get right back to it. Yeah, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't speak English. They didn't even know how to eat because they wasn't even used to food. Like, I'm pretty sure when they start getting all this good, fruits and all this stuff in their system, this good air and all that, they just flushed them out. They probably didn't know what to do. Everything was just getting itself away from them. Okay, guys, let's see. Let me skip this now. Just show a little bit on the red line in Minnesota. Let's see. You did not want to go back. This gonna make me want to pay YouTube for this subscription because that's the only reason I was playing it was because it has the commercial free. I forgot that was the one reason I kept my script up, but I have not been able to just keep paying for stuff that I'm not using, so I'll definitely cut that crap off. So let me get this one going for you guys. And let's see, I played the commercial. Hopefully we can get everything to play pretty clear here for at least a minute before it jumps into some type of disturbance. All right, hold on, guys. Find the caption. I don't need the caption. No, it's going too much.
The leading men of Minneapolis, as the newspaper called them, these are not the kind of people who want to be involved in violence. And they don't have to, because they have other tools that they can use. And this tool that they become, it's called a racial covenant. And so you see the first racial appear in a Minneapolis property.
This is where you first see the racial language.
Caucasians only, Aryans only, no Negroes or no members of African blood.
Over 100 people marched on an African American's house in October of 1909 to try to stop this family. The leading men of Minneapolis, as the newspaper called them, these are not the kind of people who want to be involved in mob violence. And they don't have to, because they have other tools that they can use. And there's this tool that they become aware of. It's called a racial covenant. And so just a few months after this confrontation, you see the first racial covenant appear on Minneapolis property.
And this is where you first see this racial language.
Caucasians only, Aryans only, no Negroes or no members of African blood or descent.
100% of them were aimed at Black people.
In many ways, racial covenants, this is kind of ground zero of residential segregation. In the United States, and very long, but this particular deployment of racism is fairly new. And this idea was really made through instruments like racial covenants.
Working in consort to moving into white neighborhoods.
It starts out as a private. You have government encourage, demanding that they make is protected with this kind of racial exclusivity.
When you can command entire the city limits, that's the Jim Crow of the North.
Here we go. Ridiculous. They be calling us all kind of stuff, huh? We could be any and everything according to these people. Come on, brother. Okay, let's see. Waiting for the stream.
Hello, I'm Toussaint Morrison, and this is Minnesota Experience. TPT is committed to telling the full range of our state's past, including the difficult history. The Mapping Prejudice Project at the University of Minnesota has documented the widespread use of race-based restrictions buried in the deeds of homes in Hennepin County. The research offers some answers. Our new documentary explores this history, which amounts to what some researchers describe as a hidden system of Jim Crow of the North.
By the end of it would seem that Minnesota was one of the most enlightened states with regard to. You had a leadership of the state seemed much more doing the right thing, at least supporting in word policies that American. Frank Wheaton came from Maryland. Wheaton came to Minnesota. He saw opportunity out here. He already had a law degree when he entered the law school at the university. And when he had absolute answer. He understood how to establish a rapport apparatus. Their support, he was able to win an election in South Minneapolis with a community made up of white and immigrant vote legislation that dealt the Civil Rights Bill, the Accommodations Bill, only dealt with blacks not being discriminated against in terms of going to restaurants, hotels, riding in streetcars, roads, places like that. It didn't really deal with other issues like schools and housing and things of that nature. But for all intents and purposes, a major step forward with regard to civil rights.
1910, Minneapolis isn't particularly segregated. There's emerging American neighborhoods around Lake Harriet, Road, certainly on the east side of Minneapolis.
Part is beautiful, but very close to downtown, very close to the University of Minnesota. It was a very desirable neighborhood, and I think neighbors weren't surprised when they saw a house that fit to this on what is now East Franklin Avenue.
Madison Jackson, I agree, but he was a Pullman porter. He moved his family to Prospect Park and he built a house there. This was the first black family there.
My father had bought a piece of land in what is known as Prospect Park, Minneapolis, and he broke ground to build the house in which I grew up. So we completed the completely white community, did not realize he was moving in. And when we moved in, the whole community became quite that a black family should be moving in.
Earl Jackson, she said, when the neighbors across the street saw who they were, she said that lady started screaming when she realized that it was an African-American family that was moved.
So I remember them. Meetings on our lawn as to why we could not live there. When my father and mother wouldn't budge, they had committees come to meet them. And I remember sitting on the steps listening to some of the things that were said. For instance, one of the things, our children will not play with children. And my father felt the impact on the children. My father playground, like there was no other like it in the whole area. And we became the most popular. Yeah.
A little while after they moved in, the father's friend and coworker also wanted to build a house in the neighborhood.
William and Daisy Simpson, they were going to build a house as well. And they were staying in the Jackson house while their house was under construction.
And I think that was the tipping point.
And that's when the resistance from white homeowners really ramped up.
And this is where the Tribune reports a raid in Prospect Park.
This mob of over 100 people, the newspaper described as powerful people, marched on the Jackson house in October of 1999. They read prepared statements.
It's decided that a large call the impressive a fact that the district do not want domiciled in our midst. Not here to argue, but to make a perfectly plain statement of our position in the matter, to want you.
And as men of prudence, judgment, and determination, we will do everything we can to prevent this. And then there was another threat.
Rumors have been brought to our attention that there are parties in this vicinity who determine that you and those of your race shall not reside in this district. They have firmly declared themselves ready to take any steps necessary to bring about your removal.
And you have to understand, in 1909, this is a period where lynchings are commonplace. These were not idle threats. The amazing thing to me is that they stayed in their house.
You don't want to hear this part. Yeah, I'm not. ignore that, guys. That's commercial. Next thing you know, the thing done kicked me out. In a second, if I can skip it and we can keep it moving. But you guys see this? This is like crazy. The way it's amazing how like they'll talk about certain stories, right? And then you'll see certain things that are going on in certain areas. Like if this family was prominent enough to move in this so-called white neighborhood, that was so prominent or what have you, they had the money and the wherewithal to, take care of where they wanted to go, know what they were doing, and that was pretty much that. So yeah, it's kind of crazy that they try to act like, this was all slave town and everything, everywhere.
Blazed a trail. She was the first African American child to go through elementary school. I learned that her mother had actually dated W.E.B. Du Bois before marrying Madison Jackson. That gives me clues as to what that household must have been like. As soon as they became teenagers, all those white friends she had basically abandoned her.
At that time, I determined I was going to get out of that kind of society and go where my people were.
She went to the University of Minnesota, where she dated Roy Wilkins and was engaged to him briefly. As soon as she finished at the University of Minnesota, she got out of Minneapolis.
Her parents had protected her, I think, from a lot of the racism in her childhood. When you get to be a grown-up, you certainly can experience this more. And she realized there was really no place for her here. Well, Minneapolis's loss was the Harlem Renaissance gain.
She ended up moving to New York City. She ended up working for W.E.B. Du Bois. She ended up one of the premier African-American journalists in the country. And then she became one of the first Black journalists to work for an all-white publication. So she has this incredible career, incredible talents, gifts, and Minneapolis lost her. Madison Jackson died in 1927. Once he died and they sold the house, both families left Minneapolis. And I just wonder what it would have been like, if they had been if the park had become an enclave for Black civil rights activists. What would that have been like? How would the city be different? And that's what I think about a lot when I think about the story.
The problem with the Madison Jackson and William Simpson incident is people had to show up in their front yard and threaten them. And this was 1909. I don't think it's any coincidence that in May of 1910, the first racial covenant shows up in South Minneapolis. I'm pretty sure I know who covenant, and that was one Edmund G. Alton. He was a state developer. The legacy he left on Minneapolis, I mean, there's Edmund Boulevard, there's all the really the worst was this legacy of racial covenant.
So when people purchase a home, traditionally you get an abstract package, and it shows every time your property, the property changed hands. And in Minneapolis, properties that were platted after 1910 are very likely to have these racial restrictions embedded in the property deed.
Covenants can be building covenants. They can be setback requirements. Racial you're concerned with tells you can or cannot lease even certain spaces.
Racially
Okay, guys, this shit wouldn't let me unmute for a minute. I'm sorry. Now, you see this, right? It says shall not be conveyed. It said mortgaged or leased to any person or persons of Chinese, Japanese, Moorish, Turkish, Negro, Mongolian, or African blood or descent. This is distinctive, but this is just distinctive to saying that these are different characters or characteristics of person and men. Man, woman versus person, man. Other entities that are in the space, right? So Moorish is different from a Negro, and a Negro is different from an African. But they tell you that they're the same thing, which it's just a matter of speaking. You know, a man is a man, a person is a person, but there is a distinction when it comes to the blood or the descendancy, right? Just wanted to show that if you didn't notice that it was showing you.
Restrictive covenants, private contracts between individuals that allow them to dictate to whom they'll sell their property.
Covenants, however, has proved challenging. The only way to find racial covenants are to read warranty deeds. We're looking at 3 deeds in Hennepin County between 1800 and 1960, and each deed on average runs about 3 pages. So we're in the ballpark 10 million or so pages of text. Penny found about 4,000 covenants by herself. The old-fashioned way. She just went down to the county recorder's office and started going through deeds. And she found something mutually restrictive. It wasn't to get us thinking, okay, maybe we can do more than just covenants work practice that was used in Minneapolis. What if we can map all of them? The first map that was shocking. I saw this, and I was shocked when she started reading me some of the language of these racial covenants.
The wording can be very different. They're working on early 20th century ideas of race.
Negro, Moorish, Turkish,
Mongolian,
Hebrew, sometimes Semitic,
people of African blood or descent, or Jews, Caucasians, except for their domestic servants of a different race who might be done with the.
Many of them were written during the period where eugenics is at front and center of American scientific thought, and that language is often what you see in these deeds.
Only people of the Aryan race can inhabit this land.
I think one of the surprising things that I found in this research is 100% of these covenants are aimed at African Americans.
Oh, there's that's black. Okay, here's the legal description.
What we're doing with Mapping Prejudice is we're using digital tools to do a lot of the heavy to help us identify the deeds that do contain racially restrictive covenants.
Covenants exist across the country. People say, well, why aren't you doing this for St. Paul too? I know there are covenants in St. Paul. Their deeds are not scanned.
Which is incredibly unwieldy, right? Traditional research methods where you go down to the archive and you just start going through. You would need an army of undergrads and the better part of a century, and even then, I'm not convinced you'd be able to get through all of them. So we use OCR to translate these digitized warranty deeds into searchable text. One text document form, I can script that iterates through and looks for predefined racial terms. And whenever it finds a match, this corresponding deed image. And once we have this into the still very large but manageable realm of around 40,000 flagged images, we ask volunteers to help us transcribe them.
And then it says sold, mortgaged, or leased to or occupied by any person or persons other than members of the Caucasian race. Yes.
And those answers I then export, and this actually gives me enough data to build the map.
All right, y'all. Yeah, I know we about to get this good commercial. Hold on. Let me mute it. So, what are you guys thinking about that? Were you listening? Brother said, why are the Negroes different from... I'm trying to highlight it. He says, why are the Negroes different from Africans if we're from Africa? Who said we're from Africa, brother? Who told you that story? Do you believe that? We're not from Africa. Negroes are different from Africans. Africans are not the same as Americans. There's a difference. But we're not going to get into that. That's really not what this is about. So I'm trying to understand your concept. You're free to come up. I had the you know, if you want to speak on it, you know, drop the link. I have an open panel. So if you have anything you want to say, definitely words construed when it comes to, you know, things people are saying in the chat sometimes. But that is like totally no, absolutely not.
Planning has always been intentional. Space has always been intentionally manufactured to shape and represent values. Has always been intentional, always been intentionally manufactured to shape and represent values. The question is who and for whom's benefit. And I'd argue historically, low-income folks of particular and, you know, larger racial ethnic groups more broadly have not been at the center of the benefits of urban planning.
The covenants were first put in 1910. But at that point, developers could start buying up large sections of farmland that adjoin the city.
When a developer buys what used to be a farm on the outskirts of town, they buy it, divide it into 6 city lots, and sell the individual lots off. At that point, when they start selling the individual lots, that's really what covenants kind of do.
Like Samuel Thorpe could buy this up and lay it out as they saw fit and covenants. It was a very efficient way of doing it. There's this region. It's there that Jace runs the country club estate. Years ago, I was really hesitant, but now I can't sell a property. And Sam Thorpe was certainly there. He was a retiring president. He comes back and in August of 1912, buys up the land that will become Thorpe Brothers Nokomis Terrace. And that is the first fully covenanted edition that I know of. It talks about no colored people or other objectionable types. Mary Greer was a woman who inherited many of the Dorman Edition properties near West River Road. After 1910, she started putting in racial covenants. It will never be sold or transferred or leased or conveyed to anyone who's a Negro. And that goes for people who are living with Negroes or Maros. She adopted that early on. Her first one shows up about 1911 or 12. And you see this all in the teens and 20s with her. And Edmund Walton did the same thing along West River Road. At one point, I think they said he had bought up 437 acres along the river. Gone in 1910 from sort of surreptitiously not recording them. Less than a decade later, he was bragging about them in the newspaper. There was an ad, and he printed the covenant, which they were accepted.
Okay, y'all see this covenant? Let's see. It says the party of the second party hereby agrees that the premises hereby conveyed shall not at any time be conveyed, mortgage, or lease to any person or persons of Chinese, Japanese, Moorish, Turkish, Negro, Mongolian, Semitic, or African blood. Check that out.
The Supreme Court even held that restrictive covenants were constitutional. This was in the Corrigan v. Buckley. And it was that decision where the court resolved that restrictive covenants are contracts, and as such, they are lawful. Now, forget about the fact that they discriminate, and forget about the fact that we say contracts exist. We are bringing up a violation issue of the 14th Amendment. Forget about that. The key thing is that the Supreme Court validated discrimination.
You have the full force of the law system determining who could go where.
And the result of that is you'll see efforts to ensure that a denial to one of the most basic foundations of opportunity for African Americans will be codified in the United States as a result.
You had not only the court ordering it, but also a kind of license of sorts of people going to the streets and harassing blacks who moved into white neighborhoods. The white neighbors, knowing that the Francis couple was moving in, offered them money to not move into the house. William Francis, if Nellie, my heroes, rejected that and moved in. As a result, faced all kinds of harassment. The Francis family did not live there for very long because shortly after moving in, William T. Francis was appointed to be the consul to Liberia, in effect an ambassador. So they moved to Africa. It's an example of how even the most prominent of African Americans at the time, who had established contacts with some of the most powerful people in American politics, Nellie herself had personal with Andrew Carnegie and 3 U.S. presidents, that despite their successes and their influence, could still be close to animus. The intensity of property values, the perception of property and race.
So what racial covenants did is they hardened boundaries. They hardened these invisible racial boundaries.
It's interesting because even in neighborhoods where there maybe aren't any covenants, just being in proximity to covenants is really powerful for keeping that neighborhood white still.
Homes are often taken for granted for some of us. Instances like the Lee family faced makes us realize that a home is a kind of fragile thing. It's a 1.5 story, quite modest bungalow. You wouldn't particularly it. But when you know anything of history and the story of the Lee family, it becomes quite powerful.
Arthur Lee was a World War I vet. He worked for the post office.
He had a good, steady paycheck at a time when 30% of the city is out of work. So he finds this house that someone is willing to sell him on 46th and Columbus.
It was not covenanted.
They had the temerity to violate what is at that point this boundary in the urban landscape. So Arthur Lee, he moves into the house. First the nation gets together and they try to buy him out. They contact the bank. They contact different lawyers. They try legal means. In 1931, by newspaper reports, 5,000 or 6,000 white people at any given time are milling around his house, trying to drive him out.
Black paint was thrown on their house.
Their dog is poisoned.
Intimidation.
The family has to sleep in the basement. They had the sense that no one was to violate them.
This is just another tool, so to speak, this citizen terrorism.
And in this particular case, Arthur, who was a World War I vet, right, comes home to believe that his service to our country gave him the same as his white, but learned very quickly that that was not the case.
It was really important for the Lee family to have advocates to help them fight. To have lawyers not able to have the NAACP on their side was really powerful in ensuring that their voices were heard. The NAACP was definitely fighting against these racial covenants and these instances of racial housing discrimination. There's also smaller clubs and organizations that are really focused on fighting this. Unfortunately, even with all of these legal protections and organizations fighting for them, a lot of people don't end up getting the end result that they want.
Edith and Arthur Lee and their daughter Mary, they stayed for 2 years. They didn't make it longer than 2 years. I think the pressure was just too great for them.
I can only imagine, as a parent, as someone who wants to ensure living my values, like what it would mean to put my family at risk, what it would mean to always feel like I'm looking over my shoulder just to protect my right.
You have to escalate things to racial comments. So it's that indication, that normalization of these racist ideas. How
the current thing has a depiction, an image of Arthur Lee. For those who just walk by, I think it gets them thinking about it.
Homeownership is the basis of a happy, contented family life. And now, through the use of a National Housing Act insured mortgage, is brought within the reach of all citizens monthly.
Bill in the FDR administration is looking to stabilize the housing market. The Fair Housing Act is passed in 1994. And as part of that, the Homeowners Loan Corporation is also established with the hope that if you could establish long-term mortgages with fixed interest rates, you could create pathways to homeownership for most Americans.
This time they can buy this house with monthly payments that are less than they now spend for rent.
When the FHA starts underwriting mortgages in the 1930s, this really is a game changer in a lot of ways. It takes a lot of risk off the banks, it places it onto the federal government, and now working class, middle class families, they're able to purchase a home.
Unfortunately, as part of that, what the HOLC does is it establishes designations for neighborhoods on occupants of those neighborhoods.
And this is where the redlining comes into place. The FHA coded map of all the largest cities in the United States, and they broke cities into different areas. Red is considered hazardous, worst. Yellow is considered definitely declining, blue is still desirable, and green is considered the best.
And what's so powerful about this kind of scale of investment about values and people.
There was no evidence that those people who lived in those communities, predominantly Black and brown people and foreign-born people, would have defaulted on loans.
There are no firm realities behind the close proximity to Black property values going down. That's just not true.
Is being very upfront and very explicit in how they're linking spatial desirability with occupancy. It's this racialization of space idea. So areas that were really African American or majority minority, or really a lot of cases, even if there's a few non-white people there, that's often enough to be redlined. So when they built these maps, they also exchange area got the, and it did.
The area around 4th Avenue South, which is called Old Side. This was a nice area. It had nice homes. It's the historic African-American neighborhood on the south side of Minneapolis.
This one part of South Minneapolis was redlined specifically due to, and I'm quoting, a gradual infiltration of Negroes and Asiatics. The FAA refused an area a green line designation. Again, this is the best designation that they'll offer unless, and I'm quoting again, restrictive covenants are in place. That line's from the FHA underwriting manual. It's just about discriminating against people of color. It's about enriching white people. And I think that's the part that's lost in this narrative. I think it to that white supremacy have been embedded in really built structures.
Oh, it ain't lost. You talking about it's lost?
Who
lost?
Grandparents
Where it got misplaced?
Homes worth million. Your grandparents rented that was redlined and destroyed by a freeway project. You know, you're hurting any.
The practice of redlining, which did start and spread racial covenants all over the country, because suddenly developers got sanctioned, they got direction from the federal government saying practices. If you want to have a really high rating, the most favorable terms for any loans.
By kind of de-integrating Minneapolis racial covenants are doing this, set the stage and enabled all these subsequent systems of inequality to really take hold.
That northern cities never had formal segregation. The South had Jim Crow, and look at those signs. Well, racial covenants did the work of Jim Crow in the North, all over the North.
Many whites simply were not aware that there was a segregation. So many people in Minneapolis would be outraged what they thought that their friend was being discriminated against. Something was happening to your friend. That was this mixed kind of a situation that we had in Minneapolis. I mean, when imagine these people, their parents sent me cookies and, cakes all during the war. And I was welcome in their house. There was no question about it. And then there's other people who were just absolutely clowning. That was what Minneapolis was all about.
But that was my generation in Minneapolis. We were hemmed in that. And that was horrible.
The 1935 land planning defined which place was diverse of these areas, called them places where the quote-unquote Negroes lived. These are places to avoid, right? So they're going to give you substandard housing, and they're going to contain you. Access to affordable housing was a challenge. When you think about the reasons behind the creation of public housing, we had a lot of folks forced to the low-wage sector, right? And you're thinking about what jobs or opportunities that low-income folks had access to at this time. You know, I would argue that with the creation of public housing in 1938, the Sumner Field homes became this really interesting iteration of the redesign of space. You have 400 public segregated. In 1953, refused to scatter another 1,000 units of public housing outside of the Sumner Field home. These pressures come from. You had both internal conservative politicians and outlying suburban communities coming in saying, not in my neighborhood. And the city council crumbled under the pressure and then took what was 400 units of public housing to over 1,000 units in less than a decade. It has strategically manufactured.
This history is very personal for me. I'm a third generation millennial. My grandparents were immigrants from Sweden who came to this country with nothing. You know, worked incredibly hard. Grandparents in 1942 were able to buy houses in South Minneapolis. These houses were in a part of the city that was blanketed by racial covenants. Because of those racial covenants, my parents grew up in neighborhoods that were entirely white. And in many ways, they described them as a paradise for children. They had wonderful parks. They had really solid schools that sent them to college. But no one in their neighborhood ever talked about the fact that the neighborhood was only for white people. And I want everyone with this map to imagine themselves in this landscape of privilege and disenfranchisement.
The judge can that restrictive covenants privates our Negroes and other minority groups from residential areas and are not enforceable by the courts. They described the covenants as an artificial quarantine.
Covenants were one of the issues that the NAACP was tackling in the first half of the 20th century.
Marshall was leader of the litigation BP. When Thurgood was asked upon his, everyone assumed he would say Brown versus Board of Education. He said, no, it was Shelley v. Kramer.
Shelley v. Kramer in the late 1940s was one of the more seminal civil rights cases that ever made it to the Supreme Court. It didn't explicitly end racial covenants as a practice, but it was a pretty big blow.
There could be no enforcement of restrictive covenants. So you could still write a restrictive covenant, but a person who could breach the contract and sell it to a black person and liable.
It wasn't as effective as a lot of folks hoped. What people started doing is instead of breach of contract, they would sue for damages. So if somebody sells a covenanted home and the neighbors can their property value.
There's never going to be any violence in this part of town. Peaceful. You've got friends here. I'm your friend. We just want to know what it is you think you're doing to us.
If I have a covenanted home and I sell it to somebody who isn't white and I get sued, I lose the house. Any equity I've accumulated, the property reverts to the initial granting party. So whoever first put that covenant on the land. If that person's dead, I would revert to the heirs or assigns of the initial covenanting party. So the risk of going against these things is just like astronomical.
Restrictive covenants the continued denial of equality for African Americans by virtue of these private contracts, which the Supreme Court will determine are not unenforceable, but still legal. In fact, it plays out in a very powerful way in Lorraine Hansberry's play, A Raisin in the Sun.
You know that money we got in the mail this morning? Yes, sir. But what do you think your grandmama done went and done?
I don't know, Grandma.
She went and she bought you a house.
That play was being produced, you have situations across the country, including one in Delaware, where a family in Collins Park are forced out of their home by a mob, and ultimately the home is bombed. But what Lorraine Hansberry captures in there, and that where Walter Younger is kind of laying out what the foundations for freedom and equality will be for his family, and it's home ownership. One day, son, see all the great schools in America, but the pathway to that is the ownership of a home. And Lorraine Hansberry hit on something very powerful in A Raisin in the Sun, because it's playing out about this family seeking home ownership as a pathway to true freedom and true equality.
And there is no one factor more representative of, conducive to, the economic well-being of the American citizen than the home in which he lives.
The spread of covenants in the first area is the same story as the spread of the Twin Cities over the first half of the 20th century. The first-ring suburbs, Edina, St. Louis Park, Richfield, Bloomington, are all blanketed in racial covenants. They probably have a higher density of restrictions than Minneapolis does, simply because there was more happening around 1950. And the effects of that are very, like, that ring is very white, and this pushes African Americans at the center of Minneapolis.
It denies them access to those mortgages. It denies them the opportunity to sell their homes. And in that sense, it closes off an opportunity to escape those communities, but more importantly, denies them the same pathway to the acquisition of wealth, home ownership, and then, of course, the sale of those properties and bequeathing those properties to their children.
My dad, Tilson would have open houses on, I think it was on 41st and 4th was the model home. It was something to behold, because as a kid, you don't really understand what this desegregation or what segregation really meant, and redlining, but you men who do what.
And in fact, I think the spokesman billed the Tilson bill as the first open housing event. So it was times African Americans could buy new homes on the quote unquote open market.
I know.
It's a huge piece of housing for the Christian of Tilson, that your dad demanded that there be African American men working on those jobs.
He knew what that economic could be, what the job power could be. And he did insist on his contractors bringing people of color to the job, and very important to him. And I think the fact that it started here, again, is something unique about Minnesota.
At the same time, the disparities that we have now don't support that it was continued.
No, it didn't carry out throughout the whole community, that's for sure. The city, yeah, citywide. And so there is some significant divide that still lasts.
So what do you guys think about? So what do you guys think about those Tilson homes that was like beautiful? Did you see the home where the family was standing, where they were selling their home? These people were forced out of their home, and these people now living in them. Somebody got that same home that we saw in that picture from years back. I'm pretty sure it's still standing, and I bet you somebody's living right up in it. Like, it came from their family heritage and all this nonsense.
We moved to Minnesota. So that was 1956.
I felt we were very fortunate to meet. We met a wonderful community of us and others. So I became involved in the League of Women Voters in AC. We were very involved in issues dealing with employment opportunities, education for our children, housing discrimination.
You are wondering what the Fair Housing March is all about. We are attempting to get a fair housing bill passed in the state of Minnesota now. I was wondering if the Fair Housing March? Sure will. Thank you very much.
There was the sense that what we needed to do was to really create a lobbying effort at the legislature in the 61 session to get fair housing introduced and passed in that session. So I was encouraged to be the chief lobbyist for that. And I invited my friend Matthew Little, Zetta Fader, and my friend Katie McWatt.
We would feel that to deny some parts of the housing market, the effect of the law is in effect.
Those who own property have a right to sell and a right to rent. To whom, and the white people, the white race, had better wake up and see the writing on the wall before it is too late.
To see America, that part of America, St. Paul, become more truly what we call the American dream. It's going to be hard. It's going to cost money. You have made this mistake. Your forefathers have made this mistake, and it cannot be remedied without a lot of pain and suffering and the expenditure of hard, cold cash.
I felt we were losing the vote. And so I went to Governor Elmer Anderson. He was a very open, fair, liberal Republican, one I knew and had a lot of respect for. So I went to the governor and I said, Governor, the housing bill is going to be defeated in the Judiciary Committee, and I'm very worried. And he went to his desk and wrote a note to each member of the Judiciary Committee, urging them to allow the bill to get out of the committee, that it was only fair and just in his judgment, and allow it then to be full one vote. So it then got to the where it passed, but again, narrowly. So that's back in 62, that Minnesota was one of the first states to pass fair housing.
Whereas Minnesota's Fair Housing Act becomes operative, an implementation of the law must come from the willingness of all of our citizens to cooperate for the common protection, as well as the belief that discrimination practiced against any individual is a threat to all. Now, therefore, I, Elmer L. Anderson, Governor of the state of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim Saturday, December 29th and Sunday, December 30th as Fair Housing Sabbath in Minnesota.
So between 62 and 67, I've been very troubled because there was still such discrimination in housing.
Program deals with the proposed fair housing bill. Senator Mondale is chief author of the bill in the Senate. Right bills. But at the same time, I think we have to be wise enough and mature enough to realize these riots tell us something. Deep and abiding frustrations and sense of rage that exists in our American ghettos. There are compelling problems of injustice and unfairness in employment, and housing, and education, and many other areas that we should have taken care of a long time ago.
Fair Housing Act makes it illegal to discriminate based on race, age, later they add sex and disability and etc. to ensure that everyone has equal access to housing where they so choose. And I think that's opened up doors for a lot of families. What happened to the Black middle class, for instance? Many folks were able to break into neighborhoods that they didn't have access to before. And we should have those choices. But when you don't have the economic mobility to make those choices, fair housing doesn't look very fair.
W, I-94, expand Hiawatha Memorial. These were all explicitly and very intentionally run through these Black communities. This kind of cordon of taking place around the city.
35W. It was a divide between the folks on the other side of the freeway and the folks on our side of the freeway. It's interesting it brought people together in one sense, and we were able to create our own community around 38th Street and 4th Avenue.
Originally from Central neighborhood, and then he went to Central High School. These stories just about what they called kind of the Black Mecca in the Central neighborhoods. When you talk about the problem, we're talking about it from a deficits-based language. I also want to make sure we're talking about an asset-based. To be aware of assault on the character of these places and take back that narrative in intentional ways.
We're not going to be able to get everybody out of these discriminated areas because many of them are in the center of our cities, and many of these people want to live there, and they want security for homeowners. And the only way we can do it is by partnership between private industry and the lending business and our government.
Our community was redlined. Simple as that. Now, as a community, we made the best of it, and we produced a great many influential people as well. And a lot of that came from having developed a pretty powerful community. When Central High School was shut down, it took the heart and the soul out of this community. And I remember them talking about 4th Avenue and how it was now referred to as Crack Avenue, which talks about the decline in the economy in this neighborhood. Down 4th Avenue through the neighborhood, there were
So even though covenants are now illegal, kind of this yawning chasm, wealth inequality, the result of covenants is still very today. About 75% of white families in Minneapolis own the homes that they occupy. About 25% of Black families in Minneapolis own the homes that they occupy. It's actually the largest, in terms of percentage, gap in the country. And this has huge implications for the racial wealth.
Low-income communities, where now there has been an investment in ownership communities, others, where if Black folks were able to participate in that during the operation of racial covenants, you might see a different notion of Black wealth. We have to first acknowledge that history and understand how we're implicated in it to then get to reparative solutions. The This project is doing something unlike anything seen across the country, which I think is amazing. So they're mapping the history of housing discrimination. They're naming something that has been allowed to exist in the shadows of neighborhood planning and politics.
Is to read these racial covenants, to get people to read these racially restrictive deeds. So from the beginning, I wanted to invite as many people as possible into that process.
A lot of it was.
It's fascinating to see. There's a genuine curiosity about something that lay hidden for so long and buried.
And I think doing it is kind of a way to kind of get to the history and better understand how things are the way they are now. Direct connection in language that is very much part of our history and is very much part of our present reality.
With the exhibit owning up to racism and housing in Minneapolis, we're hoping to illustrate how discrimination and racism and the impact that that had on real families. We really want to confront visitors with these histories, to really take action, take responsibility, and to try to help create change in some way.
And you're done at that point with that particular deed. As it turns out, a lot of universities are incorporating this into their curriculum. And you've got another one. Once you see that in a deed, you think, okay, this is one, but there's thousands out there. This has been an amazing experience, I think, for everyone involved. I mean, it's been amazing to me to see the goodwill and the energy that people have given us, which has been a huge gift. But I've also talked to people, and I've actually on what people say their experience has been. You know, these are mostly white people, and they have reported that to for them.
The hardest part about fighting climate change is to start. With an aspiration card, you can plant a tree with every year and unlock cashback rewards. Apply for your aspiration card now and start fighting climate change.
Their work is a graphic example of this otherwise invisible practice of discrimination.
Ideally, what we're looking at is changing the grand narrative away from personal pathology, cultures of poverty, as the saying goes, to saying, you know, the system was rigged from the get-go. This is how it happened.
So, at the last moment, city planners decided to reroute the freeway several blocks through a black. Racial covenants show us how structural.
We're showing how incredibly central racial covenants were in terms of laying the groundwork and the foundation for those later manifestations of racism. We are inviting people not just to know about this, but also to take action.
And what we're attempting to do is to build the first comprehensive spatial database, or map, if you will, of racial covenants for any city in the country. So there has been, I mean, this just gives you a level of precision in data that nobody's really had access to previously. And when used in conjunction with redlining, I think it can make very powerful arguments about which areas the city need to be systematically reinvested.
So it's real important to speak about the history of the and implementing some of those same approaches tomorrow. And I see pieces of that kind of ability starting to surface.
Talk about space and urban planning. We're talking more than like bricks and mortars and like windows. We are talking about people's lives, their values, and their humanity.
This thing always getting stuck. So what you guys think of that? Anybody have anything to say about that in the chat? Let me see. You know it. So we are putting the issue in their hands. We're taking it back from the start. Or taking it back from the start. Dang, I hate reading messages. What do you mean? You said, you know it. Okay, so you agree with that. It says, so are we putting the issue back in their hands, or are we taking it back from the start? Are we going back and taking it back? Yes, the Queen. The Queen was a German, so-called Queen of England. Yes. So, I wanted to, I know, let me try this. I have one more thing I want to show you guys. If I ever put up in the email, I'm going to put some email. And, so yeah, there's so much that is all circling around the there's so much circling around all these different people when when you look at all these races and this and that, they're always building. They just be building races, all these different so-called countries and continents, and all these things just came from like somebody's imagination. Shit, they made it up, and a lot of these places are like one place. All these people are the same, ethnicity, so on and so forth. So, a whole nother conversation. Maybe I won't show this now. I'll do this another time because I've been on here for a minute, and this may get into a whole nother conversation. It's been like 2.5 hours. Frida, peace, sis. How you doing, babe? Bless up to you, DJ. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings to everyone. Blessings, blessings, blessings. All the bliss to everyone's spirit, their mind, their heart, their soul. There's so much going on. Y'all up in some stress. I'm so glad I had time to at least get in here and open the panel. If I open the panel, nobody joined me today. So I know it was like late night. I was supposed to do this build yesterday, then I switched it to today, then, so on and so forth. But I do know that a lot of times people aren't seeing or getting my notifications is what they're telling me. So, I guess it doesn't matter when I do the build. It just depends on if a person catches me or not. So I wanted to get this out here. You guys know whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 people, I'm gonna, make sure I do pretty much the same thing. But this was literally an open panel, so I just really freestyled this to put some information out, a lot of things that I check out or what have you. Just wanted to put together that little presentation since I had you guys' attention. I know, sis, I know it's crazy. I don't know if y'all notice like how low the views are when I'm doing a live, and even after I do a live, unless a person like goes and like thinking like, oh, let me see if Sister Soul did a live, then you can see that I have like, or if y'all say, oh, let me see if she's got some scheduled, then you gotta check for it or whatever. But yeah, it's been like that for a couple of months now. It's crazy. I'm surprised. I'm surprised I still keep getting subscribers. That's probably from people sharing a video, or they may see me somewhere and then they'll subscribe. I've been on Clubhouse lately too. Haven't had a lot of time to get on there either, but it's a lot of good bills that are on there. Some people on there subscribe to me, because I be in certain rooms. But yeah, it's crazy. They hide all my stuff. Let me see. DJ says, same, you only show up if I'm looking at my notification and play another video. Wow. Yep. It's all kind of stuff that keeps them hidden. So I don't know. But you guys will catch it. If you don't catch it when I'm live, just come back and make sure if I do a video, it's about something. Unless it was something like this. I usually don't do these type of videos, you guys know. I just wanted to open up for discussion because I haven't done that in a while. But usually, if I have some information, I'm going to do a build because I've been so busy lately. I really rarely have time for builds. I just made this time, like I said, for this evening. But I wanted to do it earlier to catch people. A couple of people that was waiting yesterday, end up, I missed them. I apologize for that. That was, belongs to me that I would be not back in time. But, you know, um, next time I'll make sure to try and the next live that I plan, I'll try and set it a couple of days ahead. So maybe you guys just look, just check it here and there. I'll try and plan them at least 2 days ahead and try and stick to it. A lot of times, y'all know I don't want to not do it if I have it planned, but obviously something must come up very important. But I'll try and make sure I try and get to it if I plan it like maybe evenings are better. At least I know I'm more closer to being home. So either way, um, it's tricky navigating these YouTube streets. Yeah, it is. And they be navigating you, moving you, putting you out the algorithm. People don't get to see, things, but I don't really mind the live, people aren't really into it, but you guys just make sure you're checking for certain information I'm putting out. There's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people in the community have been trying to uh, do different things, so I like that, and yeah, it's been pretty good. I haven't called a lot of things going on, but I'm just hoping that everything has been in the bliss place. Everyone has been thriving, accomplishing what they need to do, um, you know, setting themselves free and apart from all the nonsense that's going on, all the fake news going on, having people scared about this, that, all kind of stuff. So I don't know, guys. I want to have a live supposedly tomorrow morning. I think, man, I probably should be getting some rest now anyway. I think I'm planning it in the morning. I have to probably change that to a little later in the afternoon, but I'm definitely going to try and make sure, as I said, I stick to my next schedule. And so just check around and see if you guys see something scheduled. I'll try and have it at least 2 days ahead of time, and I'll try and stick to the time that I have it set up for. All right, Frida, appreciate you, sis. All right, y'all, energy is everything as always. You guys are so much appreciated. Seriously, you know, I like when you guys are putting comments in the chat and, you know, giving me a little feedback. I know you're with me, and it's energizing to feel you guys' energy. You know. And I hope you guys feel mine. Even though I'm a little tired now, I still have great energy for you guys. Always loving, kind, and perfect strength and health and all of those good things. As you guys lay down to rest your head tonight, make sure you are just relaxing, laying back, and just being at your, most calmest place and being able to elevate your mind and so on and so forth to other places and actually leave this place so that you're not bounded by all these tragedies and things that we experience on a day-to-day basis. allowing your mind to be free of things that can weigh you down. Really just take weight on your spirit, your mind, your body, your soul, pulling a heavy magnetism from your spirit. That's actually what is the draining portion of you. Your spirit is the electromagnetism. So when you are having a negative energy that's proposed on your body, that's like a heavy weight. It's all in your shoulders, it can be in your back, all over. So just make sure you guys are relaxing, after you have your shower, your bath, you can just, get your mind in a good place and not think about anything today. Just think about relaxing and releasing yourself from this physical body as you relax and lay your head down to sleep. Let's just do that. All right, guys. Y'all have a good one.